someone asked me, what was your initial thought? And I said, well, they refed it up. The idea about proving the substantial link in the absence of HESA data is a burden that's been put on the universities to do on top of everything else. And more importantly, and perhaps even more controversially, is the people who are feeling that burden. The people that burden has been placed on in order to prove that substantial link are these hidden roles and these hidden people and these hidden contributions. I can't imagine somebody who's in a hidden role who's making a tangible contribution to their research culture, having then been told by their organization, well, now you need to prove to me you're belonging to this institution. And not only that, then we can ascertain what your potential value would be. That's a huge emotional burden put on a group of people who are already underrepresented, overlooked, and undervalued.
Welcome to What the Ref, our attempt at demystifying everyone's favourite research assessment exercise. I'm Simon.
I'm Gemma.
And I'm James.
And today we're going to be talking about what the ref is happening with the CKU guidance. So what updates do we have from the last few weeks?
Well, they put out the CKU guidance for REF 2029. Long anticipated, but unfortunately, it's missing some key information that the sector wants to know.
But do you know the most important thing about the guidance?
What?
You can submit a reagent.
Yeah!
We love the idea at Hidden Ref of panels having like test tubes submitted to them and having to assess them. Yeah,
that is a good reagent.
Oh, I like that color.
Yeah, so we shouldn't really knock reagents. They must be very, very important. It was just such a departure from the other kind of outputs that are being submitted. But we're going to talk about the CKU guidance a lot in a second. I've got an update that we ran the first not traditionally submitted output workshops at Kings and the University of Liverpool. They went really well. I was surprised. At Liverpool, we always work on a sort of 50% dropout rate when it comes to people signing up for a free workshop on Eventbrite. And as I sat there on Thursday morning watching more and more people pile in, I realized that we had bucked the trend once again and almost everybody turned up. So this workshop that I was kind of aimed at running for around about 40 people, we ended up running for more than 70. So there will be lots of information about the NTO workshops coming up on the Hidden Ref website. If you want us to come to your university and teach you about how to assess not traditionally submitted outputs, then you'll be able to request us to visit your university and run a workshop.
My main update, I think, is on the Hidden Ref Festival.
Oh, yeah. Okay, so what's happening with the festival?
So loads of people are signing up to come down on either the 7th or the 8th of October or both days in some cases. I think we got to the point now where we might need to book more space. And but it's really good and really encouraging to see so many people want to come. I think that's the main update from us. So if you still want a ticket, you can still get them now. But we might have to find ways of opening more space up because there's tends to be so much demand, which is amazing.
Which is not a bad thing, right? Because the more people who participate, the more we spread the word about how to evaluate non-traditional outputs, and the more it becomes a norm of how to do it. So if you want to affect research culture change, the best way is to get involved via the Hidden Ref Festival.
It's one of those things. I've run so many workshops in my career, and you usually spend your time worrying that people aren't going to turn up. And what we're doing now is we're too popular, and I'm worrying about too many people turning up. So it seems you can never have that sort of happy medium between those two places. But yeah, it's brilliant news. I think we're going to go ahead, aren't we? We're going to spend a bit more money, have a bit more room, have more people. What kind of numbers do you think we'll get in, James?
Oh, I don't know, actually. I mean, we've got a cap somewhere around sort of the 120 on each day mark. But that will really depend on, the venue. And actually we've already got the venue booked, and we're going to go to the venue next week and have a little scout around and figure out what we can do and how we can accommodate a few more people if the demand keeps spiking. Or it might well be, there's no more signups after this point and all the early adopters are the adopters we're going to expect. But your workshop last week in Liverpool and Kings suggest there's a kind of latent demand out there to have these conversations. So yeah. There may also, I should probably flag at this point, there may also be some kind of streaming option that we set up that's not full hybrid, but gives some ability to follow along with the less interactive parts of the festival, which doesn't replace the actual interactive parts, but we think that's probably going to be part of how we make sure we reach the community as well.
So if you can't get a ticket, you might be able to at least watch what takes place. Is that the idea?
Some of what takes place.
Okay.
Unless a funder wants to come along to fully, fund a complex hybrid setup for lots of interactive workshops, then yeah, that'll be the best we can do this year.
We'll just leave that one open then. If you're interested in funding it and making sure that lots of people can come along electronically as well, then please do get in touch.
Yeah.
So should we talk about the contribution to knowledge and understanding guidance, which was released the Thursday before last?
The kids are not happy.
We start with the positives.
Yes, let's start with the positives.
So let's start with positives. Yeah.
I mean, it is really positive that there is a whole section on diverse outputs, which is sort of the word the ref is using for what we call non-traditionally submitted outputs or NTOs. That is nice to see there. I joked about the reagent thing, but it's good to see that they've got a list of things that they're thinking about being the kinds of things they want to be submitted. And they are saying quite clearly that, any output that is not an article, not a paper, not a book will be assessed equally with other outputs, and the panels will be asked to kind of think about what guidance they might create or to make that happen. So that's really important that it's there. It's really important they're thinking about it. It's really important that the guidance on the kind of categories, which were the Annex K last time, that guidance is going to be coming at some point soon. So that's really good. It's there. It's really positive to see. And I think that's, testament to the community, not just us, but testament to the community really pushing back and making sure that the ref does make a kind of really strong statement in that area.
Yeah, but it'd be very interesting to see how the emphasis on diverse outputs actually translates to diverse outputs, and whether that Annex K is going to be more diverse than we've seen in Ref 2021 and 2014. I guess we'll wait and see. And I guess that's one of the things the sector really wants to know, but it wasn't in the CKU guidance this time around.
There's obviously huge demand to be submitting NTOs or diverse outputs, whatever you want to call them. But I think the thing that we're seeing is lots of people, and I saw this at the NTO workshops that we were running over the last couple of weeks, lots of people are really interested and they're even slightly worried about how they could submit NTOs. So they're coming along to learn about it. But I feel that we're still not getting that, unambiguous steer from the ref. You must submit some NTOs and we want to see reasonable numbers of them. So somebody at the workshop yesterday said, "Oh well, I was talking to another person who's quite senior, and they've said that the ref are looking for 5% of NTOs to be submitted to the."
Hang on, that sounds familiar.
I was like, I don't think that's the ref. I think that's the hidden ref. That's our manifesto. But maybe the ref have changed maybe they have replied to target and not told us. They haven't. But that was quite exciting. That maybe our message was getting a bit mixed up with the ref message. And there'll be lots of universities wondering how they're going to submit 5% NTOs to the next submission.
I think it's really interesting what you're saying, and we'll go into the drawbacks too, is there's a difference between what the ref says and what institutions interpret it to be. And we've seen that before, and everybody likes to blame the ref, but let's be serious. The ref has been very good here, and they do have the spirit of Ref 2029, which is the diversity of outputs and contributions, and a different ways of doing it. But the problem not necessarily is with the guidance per se, although, we go through the guidance and between the three of us, we're like, what does this mean? What does that mean? There are still ambiguities there that perhaps are in want of clarification. If you have clarification or you share those ideas about what is ambiguous in the guidance, please put it in the comments below and we will do our best to search it out and demystify it for you. But the other thing, there's a difference between what the ref wants to do and its vision and what institutions do relative to, the current financial situation facing universities in the UK, global, socio-political tensions around the world, as well as their specific context. Are they a teaching-focused university? Are they a research-focused university? Is it a more research-mature university, which is a term we're experimenting with here in some of my projects? Is it a Russell group? Is it not a Russell group? Is it part of this new, 10 institutions that are being set up to rival the Russell group? I mean, all of it is very context-specific, and I'm not really quite sure whether the ambiguity in the ref guidance is to enable institutions to interpret it as they see fit, or whether it actually encourages them to adopt more conservative definitions of what is, a substantive link, for example, which is one thing, or what is a diverse output and what is a diverse contribution. So I'd really like to, just reaffirms that our focus for the ETI project and for the Hidden Ref is firmly on institutions making the decisions about what to value. And it's not necessarily a problem per se with the guidance. But then again, the guidance is so ambiguous, it doesn't help, really, really communicate clearly who's included, what's included, at what proportion are they included, and more importantly, how to show that they're included.
So that's where my interest was really piqued. So on the Thursday that the CKU guidance was released, I didn't know it was coming out that morning. I was ready, but I was also at an event for the run by UKRI and the UKITSS, the sort of the technicians group. And I was about to stand up on stage and say to 150 technicians, the best thing about the coming ref is that your outputs are eligible because, as we all know, and we saw in the guidance coming out, the Future of Research Assessment Programme, that outputs from all staff members are included, not just academic staff, and stated that very clearly in the guidance. And what we saw change slightly was on when it came to the sort of the what contracts are, or well, which people are eligible to submit outputs. Suddenly, in the CKU guidance came this bit called a role descriptor, and the role descriptor had to have a link to research. Now, I thought at the time, and this is all happening like live, I'm looking at this guidance, thinking about getting up on stage, trying to work out what I'm going to do next and what I'm actually going to say. But what we saw was that some universities, because we've got links into various ones, were kind of taking that role descriptor and going, okay, this is not something we know and it's not been defined in the guidance, but we're going to define it as having research in your contract, which suddenly collapses all staff members down to people on academic contracts again, just like the last ref. So I got in touch with the ref, asked for a clarification, and I got the clarification saying, no, technicians, RSEs, groups, other hidden roles like that, their outputs definitely are eligible, but there has to be a role descriptor with something to do with research in it, which didn't really clarify it that much. So I think what we need to do on this front is we need to get some of the ref team on. We need to get Jonathan Petrowski or even Rebecca Fairbairn on, and sort of ask some questions about which roles they think should be submittable, and to get some clarification on the ambiguous guidelines that we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think also that really puts into a point that really irked me a little bit about the CKU guidance. I have to say, I'm just going to say this for a soundbite. Someone asked me, what was your initial thought? And I said, well, they refed it up. And they refed it up mainly because perhaps that the vision and the idea is there, but earlier decisions seem to have pinholed them into a situation where, they don't have the HESA data available to them anymore to be able to estimate volume in the same way that it was in 2021 and 2014. And yet they're going to have to somehow link outputs with the institution, with the idea that, yes, with the institution that enabled, that's an interesting word, James, we can talk about that, enabled the research to be done, will be, if it enabled that research, it will be submittable to that. But in amongst that is this idea of proving the substantial link. I'll do it this way, substantial link. And that is, I think, problematic because, here at the Hidden Ref and at ETI, we're all about, promoting hidden roles and all contributions to research culture and research environment. We wouldn't be able to do it. And yet the idea about proving the substantial link in the absence of HESA data is a burden that's been put on the universities to do on top of everything else. And more importantly, and perhaps even more controversially, is the people who are feeling that burden. The people that burden has been placed on in order to prove that substantial link are these hidden roles and these hidden people and these hidden contributions. And I can't imagine, and I'm very fortunate to, have research in my contract, and in the very basic idea about it, I am refable. But I can't imagine somebody who's in a hidden role, who's making a tangible contribution to their research culture, having then been told by their organization, well, now you need to prove to me you're belonging to this institution. And not only that, then we can ascertain what your potential value would be. That's a huge emotional burden put on a group of people who are already underrepresented, overlooked, and undervalued.
I think we need to listen. I think that's the thing at the moment. It's like this is the quick closest we could come to doing an emergency pod, right? Like 2 weeks after the guidance came out, because we couldn't get ourselves together to do it quicker because we were still thinking through ourselves and
Yeah, we
talking through
said
ourselves.
don't do a podcast whilst angry.
Yeah, and like words like enabled are really interesting. There's stuff like around a substantive link is really quite complicated, and role descriptors existing some places, not in others. And I think it will take a bit of time to listen and learn from the community what's going on here. That's why we're really keen to hear from our community the kind of questions that have been raised in their institutions around this guidance. I guess of the three of us, I probably read it in the most positive and optimistic light. I mean, my initial read, for example, was just, well, okay, any technician who's involved in research rather than involved primarily in teaching, their outputs are eligible. And I'm also working on the assumption that there's lots of people whose work will be included within research culture as much as it will be included in output. So yeah, I'm interested to see how, like those words like enabled are interpreted. I mean, the most basic level, enabled is like you have a job, but of course that's not enough. And so we need to see how institutions are going to actually, interpret that.
So I think that's the beauty of things like this podcast. Like we have the opportunity now to test out a couple of scenarios, to get some people on and talk through with them, hopefully from the ref and from universities as well, and talk through how they're interpreting the guidelines and ensure that the way that the guidelines were written is how the community is interpreting them. So I think that is a key thing. If you have something that you want to be clarified, please do get in touch. I'll now try and remember the email address, which is always really difficult, but it's wtref@hidden-ref.org. So if you send us an email about anything you want clarified, we'll include it in the next podcast, and we'll try and work out how we can get people on to understand, to remove the ambiguities around the guidance. So, James, did you wanted to talk about portability as well, I think?
Well, I guess portability is, I mean, this is where like we sort of, the What the Ref podcast and the fact that this is in the context of Hidden Ref becomes kind of interesting, because that kind of strays into kind of areas that are outside how the Hidden Ref campaign traditionally works. But, portability is, I think, the thing which for most academics they're most interested in. So the guidance is effectively saying that whilst in the previous ref you could, poach people and bring their publications, the substantive link is saying, well, you can't do that anymore. Stuff isn't portable, with the exception of monographs, which seem to have been given an exception within this. But that's a thing that's of like substantive importance to people in their careers. So I guess what this ref is trying to do is to say that research is produced by institutions, not individuals. And if that's the kind of the overall gloss of it, for some people that's controversial, for others it's not.
It's a bit disempowering for the individual. Like research itself is quite individualistic, and anyone who would say that they're doing research for their institution, I don't think I know any researcher who says I'm doing this for my institution.
Well, it's not for, but like,
because
there is lots of research without which.
Yeah. But we're talking, an individual's research ideas and IP is being bought by the institution and fostered by the institution, and the ref is focused on rewarding those institutions for the choices and the environment that they create to foster that kind of research. I mean, there is a causality problem in that argument too.
But then of course you did use the word individual there, and like lots of research is not
I?
possible without large teams, and going back to all the points of the Hidden Ref and things like, the schemes that we're really interested in around credit framework, for example. There's lots going on in what the circles and we operate in around Hidden Ref that's not about individuals, it's about groups.
Yeah, but teams also go beyond institutions. And this, I think we have to remember. I mean, a lot of my teams go past the UK, let alone just within an institution. And then, here we are at the ETI project, the University of Bristol with the University of Southampton, but at the same time, they're in competition to each other. It's quite interesting how that dynamic works. But again, the spirit of the ref is there, and the devil is in the details. As we know, and the ambiguities in the details, and we'll just see what institutions get out. But further to that, what I would really like to do on this podcast is get a little bit of lived experience, get one of these people who is a technician, who does research, or is a hidden role, as we call them, and talk to them about, well, how does this make you feel? How do you think that you can prove to your institution that you have a substantive link to it, and the research that you do is eligible to be considered as part of an institutional submission? How does that make you feel? And what steps have you been doing within your institution to show that substantive link? I think that would be invaluable. And that kind of information, as you said, James, is lacking when it comes to REF putting together guidance that's supposed to be a one fit suits all. And it's not always the case. So I think one thing that we can do here at ETI is listen, but maintain our grassroots level and start giving those people a voice. How does it feel? What are you doing?
Well, that gives me a perfect opportunity to plug something, actually. So on the 9th of July, it's HETS, which I think stands for Higher Education Technicians Summit, which is like the big national technicians summit. And I'll be running a workshop there, which just before the podcast, I was being asked to increase numbers yet again. So there's a lot of technicians getting together, and we're going to be working on how they would like their work to be sort of understood and referenced by the REF, but also understood and recognized by universities. So I'm sure we're going to bump into somebody there that would like to come onto the podcast and talk about their experience. So maybe I'll line up an interview for a future podcast.
So I've got a little quiz for you. So REF 2021 had an Annex K guidance. This CKU guidance have section 5.6.4, and I'm going to read. So it says, examples of diverse output types include, but go well beyond, journal articles, conference papers, monographs, and chapters to include as appropriate to each UOA, 10 bullet points. What was in there?
Reagents.
Reagents first. So there was definitely there was software in there, and there was also data in there. Definitely,
that's not
software
two.
and code were together. Software and code were together.
Software and code, yes, that's true.
There was data sets. Yeah, we got 3.
Confidential policy documents.
Confidential policy documents isn't in that list. No, but policy summaries and analyses are.
There's other types of report or something really broad like that.
Different types of report.
Yeah. So they could be chipped onto stone tablets or
exhibition and performance.
There's creative performance and practice-led outputs.
Okay, I'm assuming that's the same thing. Okay.
I'm trying to think of any new ones.
Patents. Reagents. There's got to be patents.
Not
patents.
In this one.
Patents. Sorry, patents.
Shall I just read the rest out rather than keep guessing?
Yeah. Let's go.
There's also non-textual brackets, artifacts, audio, visual, and multimodal.
Like a podcast?
Well, exactly. Reviews and research syntheses, translations and critical editions, and multi-component outputs, which I do like as a broad term.
What is multi-component outputs?
Well, we'll find out from our community, I guess.
And if anybody knows, put it in the comments, please.
This is basically intended as an indicative list until the guidance comes out. But it was an interesting one because it contained reagents, but also stuff that wasn't there last time, right? So
it shows that they're being very open, and we get to know the actual details, if I remember the timeline correctly, autumn this year. So that's
autumn. And then we'll do another not quite emergency pod, right?
Yeah. Well, if they're running on a timeline where they use seasons to demarcate the different outputs, then I think we don't need to be that worried about emergency on the emergency podcast.
Can I ask a question here? If the list of outputs comes up around the time that we would otherwise do a Halloween-themed podcast, can we wear costumes?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Really? Okay.
Fantastic. Yeah. I think that would go well.
Thank you, Gemma. Thank you, Simon. And thank you to everyone listening today. We'll be back soon with another episode of What the Ref. You can get us on all the usual podcast channels and on our YouTube channel. And there may be some more YouTube shorts coming soon as well. And please, if you haven't already, check out the Hidden Ref Festival. If you want to get a ticket for that, they're going fast. But like we said earlier, maybe we'll open up some more spaces. Who knows? But yeah, look forward to seeing you soon for the next podcast. And if you have a question for us, wtref@hidden-ref.org for those questions, ideas, thoughts, particularly on CKU guidance, are much appreciated. See you all soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.